The way we lead impacts the way people live. This world needs truly human leadership.
There was a realization that if we want to become great and endearing, we need to be more intentional. And I think to be more intentional, we needed to up our game quite considerably. And Mike, I think we saw in you a partner that could assist us in that journey of getting there.
I'm Brent Stewart, your host. Thanks for listening. This podcast is an outreach of Barry-Wehmiller. You can find us on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Barry-Wehmiller, and find our podcast articles and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. On today's podcast, we'd like to feature a story from Chapman Co Leadership Institute. They're Barry-Wehmiller's consulting arm that specializes in helping other organizations unleash the extraordinary in their businesses and their people. They do this by helping those organizations identify, develop, and equip their leaders. You can learn more about Chapman Co Leadership Institute at ccoleadership.com. Chapman Co has a dedicated branch in South Africa. And for many years, they've worked with Coca-Cola Peninsula Beverages on leadership development. Now, PenBev is the largest Coca-Cola franchise in the country with 1,300 team members. And to date, more than 60% of their organization has taken Chapman Co's Listen Like a Leader class, which is based on Barry-Wehmiller's groundbreaking internal communication and empathetic listening class. Mike Budden is a partner of Chapman Co, and he's the managing partner of the Cape Town, South Africa office. On this episode, we're going to feature a conversation between Mike and his friend and colleague, Bryn Morse, who's Coca-Cola PenBev's HR leader. Mike and Bryn talk about their journey to bring Coca-Cola PenBev's company culture to another level. They talk about the role Chapman Co played in that. They talk about the difference it's made in the company and why the journey was important. They talk about the importance of Barry-Wehmiller, our CEO Bob Chapman, on that journey. And it all started with a trip to a Barry-Wehmiller facility in Phillips, Wisconsin, and a lot more. And they're going to talk about that on this podcast. It's a great conversation because you can definitely hear the affection the two have for each other and the passion that they have for truly human leadership. And we're going to start things off with Bryn Morse.
To think back now, when we approached you to come in and assist us in terms of our culture journey on it, we still talk about that amazing meeting we had at Old Mutual House where, you gave us the context and you basically asked the board the question, we're not broken, we're good, but, do we want to go from good to great to endearing? And it's not for everybody. And that's okay. And I remember the discussion in the room in that. In fact, what preceded that meeting, I remember a conversation. I think you were in that conversation with the managing director that said, "Why do we need someone from the outside coming in here to look and assist us with something that we've been pretty good at over all these years? Why do we need a Mike Budden? Our culture's good." And I think, at that meeting that we had with the board, I think the acknowledgement and the realization was there that, yes, we are good, but a lot of the goodness has been almost by default. There was a realization that if we want to become great and endearing, we need to be more intentional. And I think to be more intentional, we needed to up our game quite considerably. And Mike, I think we saw in you a partner that could assist us in that journey of getting there, and hence the relationship started. And Mike, if I see, it's still highly relevant today as the CPD director, having someone who's not in the business to come and facilitate. Importantly, someone who has context but is not directly in the business is invaluable, because you bring an objective viewpoint. You challenge us. You see the big picture. We all get sucked into our own silos over here. It's natural. We get blind to a lot of things. And I think that's where your role has been invaluable, to ask the difficult questions, which you do, to probe. And I think the fact that you are now a trusted partner, Mike, allows you to go there without it being resentment or people being defensive or people questioning the value that you add.
Yeah, thank you, Bryn. Yeah, and as you share that, I remember that meeting very well as well. It's amazing how it stays etched in your memory, though, because I do know we went at risk to really almost reshape the agenda or the brief we were given by the managing director at the time, to say, hey, are you sure you guys want to go on this journey? You were all within 10 years, 12, 15 years of retirement. You had a recipe of success. And as you mentioned, like, you were already good, like there was nothing broken. It was a big lesson for me in a way, like, we often talked about culture transformation, and it was like, hey, some businesses don't have to transform, they just need to evolve. And I think that's important, and I take credence from a lot of the work that Raj Sisodia has done in Firms of Endearment, the Healing Organization, and as I think about that, like we never arrive at that place. Our world is changing all the time. Awareness and consciousness is changing. People's expectations are changing. We've just seen it so vividly now in the last period of time in our lifetime around the pandemic and how people's mindsets get shifted. And so important for us as organizations to be aware of that. And so I think that piece that you said, like, we came to realization we needed to be intentional. Although you already had a good culture, you needed to be intentional about that. So some 5 years into the journey, I do remember I sold you this concept of great and endearing, and a lot of the endearing was modeled on Raj's work in Firms of Endearment and conscious capitalism. And I remember one day you as a team turning around to me and saying, hey, but is this all real? Isn't this like all just pie in the sky? And we want to go and see some organizations that live this. And so you set me the challenge of putting together a journey to the USA to go and try and visit or select some businesses that we believed had inspiring cultures to them. So yeah, I'm just curious to hear, as you put out that brief, like, and we went on that, why you as a director team really wanted to do that, and what were some of your key learnings. And then once you've shared that, I'd like to go a little bit more into the Barry-Wehmiller story, but let's just start broadly speaking. What did that tour do or mean for you?
I think that tours are always good. By the very nature of the fact that you are taking a team away and you're getting outside of the boardroom and there's no agenda driven. And so within the team itself, and coming from very much a team environment that from the sporting front that I was accustomed to, I saw the value in that. But on the specific trip, Mike, that you kindly put together for us, it was really to go and have see what we could become. That some of the challenges that we face are not unique. I remember a lot of people saying, yeah, but why go to America? We South Africa, we different. Americans, this and that, and I'll never forget coming back after that trip, and we went to a number of companies, as you know, and really the acknowledgement was there that, irrespective of what continent you're on, cultural differences, etc., we all have similar needs, and we have more in common that we have in difference. Than what is different. And I think that was a big acknowledgement for us. So the learnings over there that we saw at, for example, Barry-Wehmiller, we realized were not out of our reach and were attainable and not specific only to, beyond our borders. And I think also to reading a book is one thing, but to go and experience it for yourself, to go and see it, to go and have a walkthrough and I must say, for me personally and my team, to go to Philips and go and walk through the factory there and talk to the people, the theory becomes real. And I think that's so much more powerful than sitting in a presentation and hearing about it, as opposed to experiencing it. And I think for all of us, Mike, I was sold on this a long time ago, but to get the rest of the board sold on it, I think that trip helped galvanize and unite us in the realization that actually we can take this further, and there's value in it for everyone in taking it further.
Yeah, sure. Wow. I can't agree with you more. Like, as I say, like, you can hear it from somebody and hear it through a book or a speaker, but getting that tangible experience is invaluable. The other thing that you highlighted for me there was, apart from the places we visited, the in-between times, what I call them. So apart from the formal meetings and experience, but the value of that whole director team that you took, all your colleagues, your whole team, the value of them just being together, traveling together, and the conversations that we ended up having in the in-between times were some of the most meaningful things that happened, and really just deepened your cohesion as a team. And it was an incredible thing to witness as a byproduct, or maybe it wasn't even a byproduct. Maybe it was the main thing. So on that trip, Barry-Wehmiller was our first stop. What did you find in that experience?
Yeah, Mike, it was, as you know, we all went. There was a course that Barry-Wehmiller was holding, and the content we all resonated with. The content was really good. I think what we found there was that there were so many similarities between Barry-Wehmiller and Coca-Cola Pen Bev. And we felt that we could learn so much more from Barry-Wehmiller than what we initially anticipated. It wasn't just the course material. I remember Sarah standing up there and presenting. I remember us chatting to Sarah afterwards, and Matt Wyatt as well, and seeing in those individuals, and there were others as well, that these were like-minded people, incredibly authentic, and very, very deep understanding of culture, conscious capitalism, and there were, I think, Mike, to be honest, there was an instant connection there for us.
Yeah, and just for our listeners to know that in those days, it was just before Chapman Co was born, in a way, launched into the world. They led that experience to share the Barry-Wehmiller story and its culture and what made it, in many ways, unique, I think, in the world at the time. And so, I know your mantra of you've held this mantra for a long time, of people are valuable in direct proportion to their ability to work in harmony with others. And I could just see that and the story that Bob brought to us on that course of the Barry-Wehmiller story on Everybody Matters, as we treat people as family and people in our span of care, just resonated so deeply with you. For me, the other thing I know that, maybe it's linked to the thing as our partnership with Chapman Co started, and not only your partnership, but mine too, which actually through that, and it's an incredible testament to partnership. Through the experience that I arranged for you, it gave me an opportunity to step into something much bigger as well. So as I think about that, and as I think about you stepping or connecting with the Barry-Wehmiller story as well, how strongly those family values resonated. But not only that, I know I had taken you to a point in your journey, and it was working with mainly your senior leaders, yourselves as a team, and the people in your direct span of care. But we also had come to a point of like, so how do we scale this into the business and embed and infuse this journey and this culture into the business? And perhaps that's a part of like what was opportune of meeting Barry-Wehmiller and Chapman Co at that time. So what did you see in the Barry-Wehmiller story, message, and story that connected with you and the team?
Yeah. So maybe, Mike, I don't know if this answers your question directly, but as you're talking and I've got Bob's book here next to me about Everybody Matters, and it's an incredible book, and I've referred to it dozens and dozens of times because it's so relevant. But as leaders, and this has become apparent for me, sometimes I think we say things and we don't realize how impactful they can be on people. And I want to just tell you a story about, for me, what was in my role here within CCPB was a defining moment. And that is when, on that course, we went to the Bogey Club with Bob. And we were sitting at tables, and there were different companies present there. And Bob addressed us. And I must say, when Bob speaks, people listen. I've heard Bob on a number of occasions with different audiences, mostly small, different groups that we've traveled over with, and just the impact that Bob has on people. I think people, just the incredibly powerful things that Bob speaks about, and how people listen and really almost become emotional in this. But for me, a defining moment was something Bob said, and I'll never forget it. It was around, and I see it's in his book here. It's actually on the inside cover, about looking at employees as not just numbers. You know, we're a manufacturing operation very similar to Barry-Wehmiller. And, you know, you can sometimes default to just, you know, you're a filler operator, or you're a forklift operator, or whatever. But Bob made the point that you are looking, you have in your care someone's son or daughter, or mother or father, or husband or wife. And never forget that. Treat them as you would treat your own family. And I think those are words to that effect. I can still picture Bob today. I can even remember what he was wearing when he spoke to us. He's got a sort of a polo neck type thing. It was a little chilly, and simple words, but so powerful. And I think, you know, that certainly helped, you know, me in my journey, and something that I've brought back here to the company. And yeah, you know, as Bob says, if you go through difficult times, as Barry-Wehmiller did, you don't sell off one of your children, or you know, and my, you know, it reminds me of COVID that we went through. And if I'm getting ahead of the game here, please tell me, pull me in. But it does talk to how things play out. So yeah. We were incredibly concerned around COVID, and how it would impact our organization. And I'll never forget, as COVID broke in, and the first cases broke in South Africa, and there was hysteria and concern and panic and all the things that were associated with COVID in those days. I'll never forget a call that one of the shareholders of the company made to me, Dave Lewis, and he said, "Bryn, I just want you to know that whatever happens, we're not laying off anybody, and we're going to pay people in full." Now, we did not know in March of 2020 what the future held. To make a commitment of that nature, I think, just speaks volumes of of this business and what we call family. Looking back now, we never skipped a beat in terms of there were days weeks when we were not able to sell into the market, but nobody was adversely impacted. And I think I look back and incredibly proud that through that crisis, we were able to stay true to our beliefs and our mantra that people are valuable in direct proportion to their ability to work in harmony with other people.
Sure.
Yeah.
So much it resonates, with the Everybody Matters story as well, and the approach Bob had in terms of infusing the culture into Barry-Wehmiller, and the repeats of that as well as they faced other challenges and how you have. Bryn, I'd like you to share a little bit around what you think Chapman Co. as we embarked on the journey. I know there was a part of the journey that I started with you, and then it actually culminated in me becoming part of Chapman Co. because I think of the strong resonance and the incredible impact that this work could have in our country and context. And we'll get back to that a little later. But if you were to try and sum up and we spoke earlier about you didn't really have issues, so there wasn't anything broken. But what has Chapman Co. helped PenBev with in terms of either issues to solve, or if not issues, how it supported PenBev? Maybe you can just describe a little bit of what you think we've really brought to help you in your journey going forward.
The obvious one, Mike, is the university that we have. And it's quite interesting. One of my direct reports this morning said to me, and we were being a little bit philosophical about things, and asked the question, do I think the university is giving us the call it the return, for lack of a better word, that we initially envisaged? And for me, the university was a game changer, and the university was only made possible by the kindness and generosity of Chapman Co. And I think at that stage, Barry-Wehmiller, obviously with your facilitation, making it a reality for us. University, we've got a building here, we've got brick and mortar, but it's all about the content, not about the structure. And for Chapman Co. to entrust us with the incredible material that is created and put out into the universe by the brains trust at Chapman Co. To trust us with that, for us, was incredibly humbling. But also the realization with us was we need to do justice to the trust that has been bestowed upon us. So we have a high regard and a high standard for what we offer. Listen like a leader is foundational to our leadership within the organization. Everybody goes through Listen Like a Leader. It's a brilliant course. I digress a little bit, but I've been on it twice. I had the privilege of attending it over in St. Louis, and then attending it here as well. And it's just a point I want to make. I don't want to lose this message in this discussion. But if you can put out material, and if you can, and where it can impact on one's personal life for the better, I always believe it's there to stay. It will remain relevant for people. And I used to think I was a great listener. I did think, going on a course for 3 days, Listen Like a Leader, what are we going to do? And so I went there with a big question mark, and suddenly became very apparent that I was not what I thought I was in a great leader. And it changed my relationship with my daughter. I'm a single parent. I have a beautiful daughter. She is also part of the reason why I get up every morning. And it became very clear to me that actually I had not been there for her. I thought I had, but I wasn't. I had blind spots. We all have blind spots. But it changed my personal life at home. And so the transition in terms of way it changed me as a leader here was seamless, was so easy. Wow. Because I saw the impact of it. And wow. Again, Mike, it talks to family at home and family here. They're not. There's no difference. We talk about one family at the end of the day. So, Mike, certainly Chapman Co. in terms of the university that was established and the impact that that's made on our leadership in the organization, I think has been invaluable. Yeah, it's something tangible that people can relate to. It's not just words. It's not just a board put up in the canteen with words on. It's actually putting it into practice. It's something that people can see, can feel, can experience. And when you touch those senses, the learnings, I think, become invaluable, but also they're sustainable over time. Sure. So it wasn't just the university, Mike. It was a number of other things, and I've shared this with you before. The board asked me at times, Mike's great. He's been around for a long time with us. Shouldn't we perhaps see if there isn't anything that we should be looking at? And Mike, it's for me very easy to be able to address questions like that, because Chapman Co. for me, and I think there's a realization of that in the business, and that speaks to you specifically because you are very much the face of Chapman Co. for us, but also the folk in St. Louis that are a phone call away and have always been willing to assist and engage. But you've remained at the cutting edge in this field. You're constantly developing, you're constantly recreating to remain relevant. So I think that's very important. Never become outdated. So the relevance and the impact that you had today is very different to what you had 14 years ago when you started with us, but equally as important.
Right. Yeah. And Bryn, as you share that, I think that is a challenge on our side, obviously, as a business and as a team that partner businesses to remain relevant. As we said earlier, our world is continuously evolving. People's expectations are changing. And how we do that. And, I think it's one of the key things, even in Barry-Wehmiller as our parent company, we by no means have arrived at all this stuff. We're all on a journey, but I think the opportunity to learn together. And that's what you offer me also, the opportunity to learn with you and to try things. And sometimes it's experiments. But the relationship, a real partnership one can have is that one where we're walking the road alongside with each other. And we're accompanying each other on this journey and being able to bring those. So value that. What I really valued what you shared was the impact that some of this work has had on you personally, the impact that listeners had on you personally, both in your family and with your team. And no doubt, as you've shared that, like how that has impacted the people in PenBev, how do you think it's helped the business?
I mean, let me answer that in a couple of ways. If one looks at pure metrics, if one had to just be a little callous about it, and so our CVAs, which we do every 2 years, first one being in 2011, I think. So we've done a number of them. I think we're on our seventh one.
Yeah, and so just for the listeners, a CVA is
a culture values assessment. It's a Barrett survey. And effectively, it measures one's culture within the organization, looks at entropy, looks at your current state and your personal state, your current state and your desired state, and looks at the matches between that. And I'm just giving very high level, but our scorecard has improved over time. So that's one metric. But we are the only bottler in the country that is not unionized. And for me, it's an indication that there's trust within the workplace, that we don't need a third party there to govern our relationship. And so that's something else that for me is a barometer. Our average year of service tenure is 13 years, which in the South African context is really good. And it does mean that when people come here, they are happy and want to stay. Our annual turnover rate is less than half of what the national average is. So people, we're not losing people. And something I sometimes forget to mention, for a number of years now, consecutive years, we have been nominated as top employer in South Africa by an international body, and certified as a top employer. And for me, that's also confirmation of the fact, and they're rigorous. One of the biggest areas that they scrutinize with a fine tooth comb is culture, transformation, and to be certified as a top employer for me is confirmation that we're getting certain things right. I think, Mike, in the business itself, if I look at leadership, there's always work to be done. We never arrive. I would say this journey, I remember having a leader saying, we need to know where we're going. We can't be embarking. The train can't leave the station and we're on this journey and we don't know where we're going. And I'll never forget your words, Mike, is part of being in an endearing state and have an endearing mindset is to be comfortable with ease with uncertainty, as they call it. And it's about the journey. It's not about the destination. So it's about where you're going. And I think, Mike, you have brought that to the business on this journey. Chapman Co have brought that to the business. Your involvement with us on an ongoing basis, on an annual basis, you hold relevance. I think for me, the most important thing in any partnership, and we have it with you, we have it with Chapman Co, is one of trust. Trust that the partnership is adding value to both parties, and trust that we have one's best intentions in mind, and that we're always looking at it. And I think this is, you and I have been able to get that right, looking at how do we, because you also got a Chapman Co as a business. You often go way beyond that, but that there's a win-win relationship, whatever that may look like. And I think Chapman Co is certainly, Mike, the work that you do speaks for itself. And amongst leadership, you're seen as a trusted partner, and that makes my job very, a lot easier. I don't have to do any selling anymore. An integral part of the DNA of the business.
And I really value that, because I think it's one of the hallmarks that Raj also speaks of in Conscious Capitalism, about how do we find win to the power of six, which is trying to create win-win-win for all our stakeholders, and even suppliers like us, that there is win-win in that, but more importantly, it's, I think for me, we don't always know that destination, but we know we're trusted advisors and trusted partners in thinking about how we're going to go to that next step. As I think about metrics, and you mentioned a couple, and certainly your culture scorecard, your people scorecard, your turnover rates, but there are a couple of other hallmarks for me that have stood out along the road, is that this business has faced some significant headwinds in the South African context. Sugar tax was imposed on you as bottlers. We had a water crisis in the Cape area where we nearly ran out of water, which is fundamental to your product. And we hit COVID. You had a numerous sort of almost existential crisis, and the one thing that I observed was how you weathered those storms relative to some of your competitors or even your fellow bottling companies in the rest of the country. And I think it's testament to the culture that you've built. And we would often say that culture is not for the good times, it's actually for the tough times to help us get through that. I'd love to hear if there are any significant personal stories from the work, stories of the interaction of people within the business, how do you think your purpose, the work we do together, impacts people's lives?
Yeah, Mike, you mentioned sugar tax, you mentioned COVID. I mean, there was CO2. You were around when we had the major CO2 issues. And there will be other issues as well. I mean, that's the very nature of our business. We're facing incredibly stiff competition at the moment. We, as you say, it's easy to unify people and to keep people engaged and upbeat when you are winning. But in the face of adversity, it's if you don't have a solid foundation, cracks start developing. And I think we've weathered many storms. And I think the work that we do has enabled us to be able to be united, in the understanding that together we all succeed. If the ship goes down, we all go down together. There's not a separate lifeboat for leadership to jump onto. We're in this together. Incidentally, it's worth mentioning one of the things that you helped us with, Mike, is the narratives that we use in the business. So we don't talk about management, senior management, top management, employee. We've changed all those things as symbolic and what I call tangibles for people to understand. So we talk about our hearts. We're all leaders in our own right. The university is open to everybody here, irrespective. And in the South African context, we have team members who can barely read or write, up into highly qualified engineers and people with MBA, etc., etc. So we have a very diverse group of team members, and how to ensure that they are unified, working together, and united, and that lines aren't constantly drawn, does require work to be done. And back to Chapman Co, I think you guys have, with things like Serve, with things like Include, have really helped us, break down barriers that are still very prevalent in business in South Africa today. I think, again, how do you impact us? Again, going back to some of that course material, which is brilliant. And it's, challenges we face here, if I look at what's happening in America today, they're similar. They're similar challenges. So the way you approach them there is very useful for us to understand, in us being able to cope and address those challenges here.
Yeah.
I think stories, Mike, there are so many stories. I just want to say the willingness of Chapman Co to be transparent and welcoming with our leadership teams in hosting them over in the States has been for us game changers. As you alluded to, not only getting us out of the workplace, and bearing in mind we have a population still in South Africa that is very much based along economical lines, but also cultural lines, given our history. But when you come into our workplace, it's incredibly diverse. Our leadership is incredibly diverse. So we're able to take those groups, put on a plane, go over to Chapman Co, drive all the way to Phillips, experience Phillips as we have on a number of occasions. The values, the takeouts for that have been invaluable. So, yeah, Phillips holds a very special place for me because it's almost home away from home. It's a manufacturing environment there, and the individuals and the friendships that we have formed there have been amazing, Mike. So
sure. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. You know what I hear in that, and as you said, there are many stories you can recount, but at the base of it, I'm hearing friendships and relationships which have made the biggest impact, whether it's here or there. As you talk about the opportunity to go and visit there in Phillips, to our US listeners, I would encourage, hey, time to come and visit us as well and experiences. But I think at a much deeper level, Bryn, what you've brought to the surface here is we live in a world that seems to at times become increasingly polarized in many parts of our world. And South Africa comes out of a very polarized situation as well. And for me, when you alluded to it earlier, no matter where we travel in the world, underneath all of that, the basic fundamental human values of dignity and respect and love and care are there, and that's what we all want. And I think what you've brought to the surface for us is the way this type of work and the way we lead in organizations has the opportunity to start bridging some of those divides just by us being able to listen empathetically to each other, to connect properly with each other, to find behaviors that draw our relationships closer together. So maybe to wrap up, you mentioned your business is you're in fast-moving consumer goods. It's highly competitive. Market share is really important. Needing to stay on top of your game, really important. Manufacturing well, producing well. So as the business strives to excel and perform, I've also heard this deep sense of your shareholders being deeply committed to the people, deeply cares about its people as well. Why is that so important for this group, and why is it so important in our context here in this little part of South Africa?
I think it partly goes back to the why around just chatting to yourself and the likes of Sarah, why you've been so kind and generous to us in terms of sharing so much with us, and just wanting to, Bob, I guess, wanting to make a change for the better, impacting a broader audience and not just be restricting it, but sharing the good story, as it were. So I think there's the realization, Mike, that it's important that we're a beacon of hope. I think in South Africa, where we have incredible challenges, we don't do it for accolades. We do it because we believe it's the right thing to do. To quote you, Mike, get all of this right and everything else will fall into place. We're not doing it to directly impact the bottom line. But if we have people that are committed, that they can be the best that they can be, and that they're engaged, the rest will follow. And we don't put into our purpose or our mission or our vision wealth creation or it's getting the other things right, and also getting the balance between what we call smart and healthy. So for us, Mike, it's a question that I've actually got to stop and think, because it's now so much part of our DNA that it's a question we don't. It's just accepted that it's the right way to do things. And it speaks to, I think, Mike, also authenticity. I think if you go on this journey and you're not authentic about it, you're not genuine about it, you're doing it because you want to look good or you have some other agenda, you'll be exposed very, very early on. And we certainly picked that up in our partnership with Chapman Co. In terms of the authenticity around the organization and how that resonates with us as well. I'm not sure if that answers Mike.
No, it does. It does. Thanks, Bryn. And I know this probably is from an investment perspective, investors could possibly get better returns elsewhere than sometimes in the space here, but I know how committed your investors are to the upliftment of people in our communities that have been previously disenfranchised, disempowered, and giving people opportunity for meaningful work. And that's a big part of the equation that you play in our part of the world. And so, yeah, I really just, hey, Bryn, I want to thank you. It's been an incredible hour of conversation with you. I know you've given us Chapman Co. a lot of accolades in that partnership, but I will say this, that it is about partnership, and none of this would happen without very willing and committed values-based leadership that we experience in your organization.
Don't forget, you can learn more about Chapman Co. Leadership Institute and what they can do for your organization at ccoleadership.com. And don't forget to find us and connect on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Barry-Wehmiller. And you'll find more podcasts, articles, and videos at trulyhumanleadership.com. I'm Brent Stewart. Thanks for listening.